My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 47 years old, and the strange thing about the moment your life begins to fall apart is that it doesn't feel like destruction at first. It feels like relief. If you had looked at my life 8 months ago, you would have seen something stable, predictable, safe. A husband of 20 years. A daughter who still left her shoes in the hallway and forgot to sign school forms. A house that smelled like coffee in the mornings and laundry detergent in the afternoons. From the outside, it looked like a life people would envy. From the inside, it felt like I had slowly disappeared inside it. Daniel, my husband, was not a bad man. That's what made everything worse. He was responsible, reliable, present in all the ways that could be measured. But somewhere along the years, he stopped seeing me. Not in any dramatic way. Not with cruelty or neglect you could point to and say, "There, that's where it broke." It was quieter than that. He stopped looking up when I spoke. Stopped noticing when I changed my hair. Stopped asking questions he actually cared about the answers to. I became background noise.
A function. A role.
A woman-shaped outline moving through his life. The night everything shifted didn't feel important. It was just dinner. Daniel had invited his best friend and business partner over, Marcus Hale. I had known Marcus for years. Over a decade, really. He'd been at our barbecues, our holidays, our daughter Mia's birthday parties. Safe.
Familiar. Harmless.
That's what I thought. Dinner was ordinary. Or at least it started that way. Daniel was on his phone again, scrolling through something work-related. Or maybe crypto, his newest obsession. I was talking. I don't even remember about what. Something small. Something forgettable. But I remember the feeling behind it. That quiet, desperate need to be heard. I just feel like, I had said, laughing awkwardly, like I'm a ghost in my own house sometimes. Daniel didn't look up. Not even for a second. But Marcus did. He set his fork down slowly, and then he looked at me. Not glanced. Not acknowledged. Looked. Really looked. Like I was a person worth paying attention to. "Sarah says the same thing sometimes," he said softly. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Like we forget they're actual people, with actual thoughts. Something in my chest tightened. Daniel didn't react. Didn't even register the comment, but I did. God, I did. Because in that one small moment, I felt seen. And it was pathetic how little it took. The messages started a few days later. Nothing inappropriate. At first, Marcus sent me a meme about something mundane. Marriage humor, I think. I laughed. Responded. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because he kept responding. And unlike Daniel, he listened. Really listened. I would vent about feeling invisible, about how Daniel never seemed present anymore, about the quiet loneliness that had settled into my life like dust. And Marcus would validate it. "You deserve better than that. Any man would be lucky to have you." I don't think Daniel realizes what he has. Those words, they shouldn't have meant as much as they did, but they did. Because I had been starving for attention, for validation, for someone to look at me like I still mattered. 3 months. That's how long it took. 3 months of messages that slowly stopped being harmless. Late-night conversations.
Confessions.
Dreams we hadn't said out loud to anyone else. I told him things I had never told Daniel. About how lonely I felt. About how sometimes I wondered if I had chosen the wrong life. About how I fantasized. Not about a specific person, not yet, but about escape. And Marcus, he met me there. He told me about his relationship too. How his ex-girlfriend, Sarah, had grown distant after years together. How their connection felt like routine instead of passion. How he felt trapped in a life that looked perfect on the outside, but felt empty underneath. We weren't just talking anymore. We were building something. Something dangerous. Something we both pretended wasn't what it was. The first time we met outside of the house, I told Daniel I was seeing an old college friend. The lie came too easily. That should have scared me, but it didn't. It thrilled me. I wore a red dress. Nothing inappropriate, but flattering enough that I knew exactly what I was doing. When Marcus saw me, he paused, just for a second. "Wow," he said quietly, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Beautiful. We talked for 3 hours about everything except the one thing that mattered. When he walked me to my car, his hand brushed mine. It was nothing, barely a second, but my entire body reacted like it was everything. We shouldn't do this, I whispered. He stepped a little closer. Do what? He asked, his voice low. We're just talking, but we both knew that wasn't true. That was the moment, the exact moment where I could have stopped, where I could have gone home, told Daniel the truth about how I felt, tried to fix what was broken, but I didn't. Because for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible, and I wasn't ready to give that up. Not yet. Not even close. The second coffee meeting became lunch. Lunch became late afternoons that had no business belonging to either of us. Late afternoons became excuses. Then lies. Then doors closing behind us in places that had nothing to do with friendship. It happened the way disasters always happen in stories people later pretend they would have seen coming. Not all at once. Not with thunder. Just one line crossed so quietly, it barely sounded like a warning. After that first meeting, Marcus started texting me more often. Not just when he was bored. Not just when something reminded him of me. Every morning. Every night. Sometimes in the middle of the day, when Daniel was 2 rooms away and I was loading the dishwasher or answering emails or helping Mia find a missing charger. Little things at first. Thinking about you. Hope your day gets better. You looked beautiful today. And then bigger things. I can't stop replaying coffee. I shouldn't say this, but I've never felt this understood before. I wish I'd met you first. That last one should have ended it. It should have jolted me awake. Instead, I stared at the screen until my face flushed hot, and I felt that dizzy, shameful thrill rush through me again. I typed and erased 5 different replies, then finally sent the one that mattered most, because it told him exactly how far I was willing to go. Sometimes I wish that too. After that, whatever illusion of innocence we had left dissolved. Not publicly, not in a way anyone else could see, but privately, between us, the line was gone. The first time he kissed me, it happened in his car behind an office building after sunset. I remember every detail of that evening with a kind of vicious clarity I wish I didn't possess. The sky was bruised purple. There was a rainstorm threatening in the distance, but never quite arriving. I had told Daniel I was at a book club meeting. Marcus had said he just wanted to talk. That was the lie we told each other the most back then. We just want to talk. But when I got into the passenger seat, the air between us already felt charged. Too close. Too warm. Too full of all the things we hadn't said directly. He looked tired that night. Handsome, but restless. Like someone living inside a skin that no longer fit right. For a while we did talk. About nothing important. About Mia's upcoming Sweet 16. About work. About how strange it was getting older and realizing the life you built could still make you feel lonely. Then there was a silence. And in that silence, I made the mistake of looking at him too long. Marcus noticed. Of course he did. You keep doing that, he said softly. My throat tightened. Doing what? Looking at me like you want me to say something that'll ruin both our lives? I should have laughed. I should have opened the car door and gone home. Instead, I whispered, maybe I do. That was all it took. He leaned in slowly, like he was still giving me time to stop him. I didn't. When he kissed me, it felt less like passion and more like surrender, not to him, to myself, to the ugliest, hungriest part of me that had spent months building a case for why I deserved this, why I deserved to feel wanted, desired,
chosen.
The kiss lasted only seconds before I pulled back, breathing hard. We can't, I said. He rested his forehead against mine. Then tell me to stop. I didn't. And that silence said everything. After that, it became physical faster than I want to admit. A hotel on the edge of town with anonymous beige walls and heavy curtains. A weekday afternoon when I told Daniel I had a dentist appointment. The first time I stood in front of that hotel mirror afterward, fixing my hair with shaking hands, I remember feeling 2 things at once.
Euphoria.
And disgust. But even then, disgust wasn't stronger. That's the part people don't like to hear. They want remorse to arrive immediately, like some built-in moral reflex. Mine didn't. Not at first. At first, I felt alive. That is the unforgivable truth. Alive in a way I had not felt in years. Marcus touched me like he had been thinking about it for months. Looked at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking in silence. He said things Daniel hadn't said in a decade. "You're incredible. I can't believe he ignores you. You make me feel young again." And I drank those words like a woman dying of thirst. The affair settled into a rhythm. That's what still horrifies me when I look back, how quickly betrayal can become routine. We became careful.
Strategic. Methodical.
Different hotels. Cash when possible. Deleted messages. Excuses polished smooth through repetition. I invented girls' nights and committee meetings and fake lunches with women whose names I used like shields. Marcus started keeping a second phone. There was something grotesque about how efficient we became. Like we were proud of ourselves for managing deceit so well. Like cleverness somehow made it less ugly. At home, I still packed Mia's lunches, still asked about homework, still reminded Daniel about dry cleaning, and watched television beside him in the evenings, while secretly waiting for my phone to buzz. That double life became more real than my actual one. My marriage began to feel like a hallway I passed through to get to the secret room where the real version of me lived. Or maybe not the real version. Maybe just the most selfish one. Marcus fed the fantasy every chance he got. He knew exactly how. He would ask questions Daniel never asked. What did I want? What kind of life would make me happy? If I could start over, what would I choose? No one had asked me questions like that in years. Not because no one cared, maybe, but because I had stopped insisting that my inner life mattered. Marcus made it matter, or pretended to. At the time, I couldn't tell the difference. He told me I was wasted in my current life. He said I had become too small for it, that a woman like me deserved devotion, not neglect. I should have recognized the manipulativeness in that, how neatly his words excused both of us, how they transformed betrayal into liberation. But I didn't want truth. I wanted permission. Marcus gave it to me, and because he was lonely too, or claimed to be, we turned our selfishness into something that sounded almost noble.
Connection. Fate.
Two people finding each other too late. That's the lie affairs love best. That they are tragic love stories instead of acts of entitlement with a prettier soundtrack. We started talking about leaving, at first in half jokes, then seriously. He said Sarah had changed, that they were basically over in every way except legally, that she had become cold, distant, impossible to reach. He painted himself as trapped. I let him. Because it mirrored the story I was telling myself about Daniel, that my husband had abandoned me emotionally, that our marriage was already a shell, that I wasn't destroying anything living, only walking away from something already dead. But if that had been true, I wouldn't have lied so hard to protect it. That's another truth I didn't want then. People don't hide what they believe is already over. They hide what they know they are betraying. Still, Marcus and I kept building the fantasy. We'd leave our partners. Not right away.
Carefully. Respectably.
He used that word once. Respectably. And I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. We said we would wait a decent amount of time before going public. We said people would be shocked, but eventually they would understand. We said true love always looks messy to outsiders at first. What breathtaking arrogance. We were not planning a future. We were storyboarding a justification. And in the middle of all of that, there was Sarah, Marcus's ex-girlfriend. Kind, warm, observant Sarah. That is one of the things I changed in my mind afterward, over and over, trying to make her crueler, colder, easier to betray. But she wasn't. She was thoughtful, funny. The kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthdays and brought practical gifts instead of decorative nonsense. She trusted me. That may be the worst part. She trusted me. She and I had become close over the years. Not sisters, not best friends, but close enough that she had cried in my kitchen once after her father's surgery. Close enough that we exchanged holiday gifts and last-minute school recommendations, and recipes neither of us ever followed exactly. And while I was sleeping with Marcus, Sarah was helping me plan Mia's birthday, my daughter's sweet 16. She offered before I even asked. "I'm good with the tech stuff," she'd said with a smile. "Let me handle the slideshow, the projector, all of that. You already have enough on your plate." I remember hugging her, actually hugging her, thanking her, while 2 nights earlier I had been in a hotel room with the man she still believed was hers. It is possible to hate who you were and still remember exactly how convincing she was. I did not stumble through this affair confused or powerless. I chose it repeatedly. That matters. As the party got closer, things with Marcus intensified. Maybe because the deadline made it feel dramatic. Maybe because we both sensed something unsustainable in what we were doing and mistook that pressure for passion. He became greedier with his affection, more reckless. He would text me during family dinners. He once slipped his hand against my lower back in my own kitchen, while Daniel was in the next room, and Sarah was helping Mia tape gold decorations to the fireplace. I nearly jumped out of my skin. He only smiled. That private, dangerous smile that used to make me feel electric, and now, in memory, makes me sick. Later that night, I texted him. "You can't do that," he replied. "Why?" "Because you're afraid someone will notice. Or because you liked it." I hated how quickly my pulse answered before my conscience did. There were signs. That's what I keep coming back to. Signs I ignored because I thought I was the only one smart enough to read a room. Sarah grew quieter in the final week before the party. Not hostile, not accusatory, just watchful. There were moments when I caught her looking at me with an expression I couldn't name fast enough. Not suspicion exactly. Not yet. Something colder. Something gathering. Once, while we were reviewing baby photos for Mia's slideshow, Sarah asked, without looking up, "Do you ever think people confuse attention with love?" The question hit me hard enough that I almost dropped my glass. I forced a laugh. "What do you mean?" She clicked to the next photo. Mia at 6, grinning with frosting on her cheeks. "I mean, sometimes people are so hungry to be noticed," Sarah said lightly. "They'll mistake being chosen for being cherished." I told myself she was speaking generally. I told myself if she knew, she would say it plainly. I told myself a lot of things back then. Marcus texted me that same night. 3 more days. Then we figure everything out." I stared at that message so long, the screen dimmed in my hand. 3 more days. That was how I framed it in my mind, as if destruction could be delayed by a countdown. As if a perfect party could hold back the truth a little longer. As if the universe had agreed to let me borrow happiness until after Mia blew out 16 candles. The morning of the party, I woke up with dread sitting on my chest like an animal. Not enough to stop. Just enough to make me irritable, restless. I kept checking my phone. Marcus sent a message around noon. "You look beautiful in blue. Wear that one tonight." He meant the dress he liked, the one Daniel had never once commented on. I wore it. Of course I wore it. By then, I was so deep inside the performance of being loved that I mistook obedience for romance. The house filled with flowers and catered food and the sharp, sweet smell of icing from the bakery boxes. Mia floated through it all, glowing, 16 and happy, and careless in the way only children who still believe their world is safe can be. She looked stunning. I remember that with painful precision. Pink dress, soft curls. That bright, open smile she had before I turned her birthday into the worst night of her life. Sarah arrived early, just like she promised, to set up the projector and test the slideshow. She hugged me when she came in, held on for 1 beat too long. "You okay?" I asked. She smiled, perfectly calm. "Of course," she said. "Everything's ready." At the time, I thought she seemed strange. Now I think she seemed certain. Marcus arrived later, with that practiced ease he had in public, like he had never once touched me in secret. His eyes found mine across the room, just for a second. And there it was again, that smile. Small.
Confident.
A promise without words. Tonight. Later. Soon. I smiled back. That was the last lie I ever told myself, with any joy. The party was perfect. That's what everyone said. That's what it looked like. Music drifted through the house, soft and celebratory. Glasses clinked. Parents smiled too widely, the way adults do when they're performing happiness for their children. Mia stood in the center of it all, laughing, glowing, alive in that fragile, fleeting way that only 16-year-olds can be. For a few hours, I almost believed I had pulled it off, that I had balanced everything, that I could live two lives without either one collapsing. Marcus stayed just close enough, never suspicious, never careless. A hand brushing mine near the kitchen counter when no one was looking. A glance held 1 second too long across the room. That quiet current running between us, like a secret language no one else could hear. Daniel, for once, was present.
Charming. Attentive.
He laughed with guests, shook hands, made jokes. At one point, he wrapped an arm around my waist in front of everyone. A gesture so normal, it almost felt foreign. I remember thinking, briefly, maybe I imagined the distance. Maybe things weren't as broken as I had told myself they were. But then, Marcus caught my eye again, and the illusion snapped back into place. It was time for the toasts. Everyone gathered in the living room. The lights dimmed slightly so the slideshow could begin. Sarah stood near the projector.
Calm. Composed.
In control. I remember feeling a flicker of unease then. Not fear, just something off, but I ignored it. Because I had been ignoring everything that didn't fit the story I wanted to believe. Mia stood beside me, clutching her glass, smiling nervously. "Mom," she whispered, "don't cry during your speech, okay?" I laughed softly. No promises. If I had known what was about to happen, I would have held her tighter in that moment. I would have memorized the sound of her voice before it changed. Sarah stepped forward. "Before we celebrate Mia," she said, her voice clear, carrying easily across the room, "I think it's important that everyone understands what kind of people they're really celebrating with." The room went still. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet. Like the air had shifted, and no one could quite name why. My stomach dropped. Hard. Cold. I looked at Marcus. He had gone pale. "See?" Sarah continued, holding up her phone. "I found something interesting while setting up this projector." No one moved. No one spoke. Daniel turned toward her slowly, confusion written across his face. Mia frowned slightly, not understanding. I felt my heartbeat in my throat, in my ears, in my fingertips. "No," I whispered under my breath, but it was already happening. Sarah pressed a button, and the screen behind her flickered to life. At first, it looked like part of the slideshow. A message. Text on a white background, then another, and another. My blood turned to ice. "Can't wait to taste you again." Daniel suspects nothing. He's clueless. Sarah's so cold. "You make me feel alive. I love you." I want to leave them both. Each message appeared larger than life, 15 feet high. Impossible to ignore. Impossible to escape. 8 months of lies. Of betrayal. Of intimacy that was never meant to be seen, now displayed for every family member, every friend, every neighbor to read, out loud, in silence. A sound left my throat. I don't know what it was. Not quite a scream, not quite a sob, just something broken. I tried to move, tried to step forward, to stop it, to say something. Anything, but my body wouldn't respond. It was like watching my own execution from inside my own skin. "Mom?" Mia's voice, small.
Confused.
"No," I said again, louder this time. "This isn't," but the messages kept coming. Click, click, click. Each one worse than the last. More explicit, more intimate, more undeniable. Around me, the room fractured. Gasps, whispers, the low, horrified murmur of people witnessing something they couldn't look away from. Daniel stared at the screen, like his brain refused to process what his eyes were seeing. Mia's face drained of color. Marcus looked like he might be sick. His children tugged at his sleeve, asking questions he couldn't answer. "What does that mean, Dad? Why is Mom's name there?" I finally found my legs. I turned. I tried to run, but I didn't make it far. My knees buckled, and I just stopped. Frozen. Trapped. Forced to watch every word I had ever sent, every lie I had ever told, unfold in front of the people I loved. Sarah never raised her voice, never rushed. She clicked through each message with surgical precision, like she had rehearsed it, like she had waited for this moment. And maybe she had. Maybe this was her justice. When it ended, the silence was unbearable.
Thick. Suffocating. Final.
Sarah lowered her phone, looked at Mia, and said quietly, "Happy Sweet 16, Mia." Her eyes flicked to me.
Cold. Unforgiving.
"I'm sorry your mother is a liar who destroyed 2 families for something that was never worth it." The words landed like blows, but nothing hurt as much as the look on Mia's face. Sarah turned and walked out. Just like that. Marcus hesitated for half a second, just long enough for me to think, he's going to say something. He's going to come to me. He didn't. He gathered his children and followed her, without a word, without a glance back. Half the guests left immediately. The rest stood awkwardly, unsure whether to comfort or escape. Daniel finally turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Not anger, not even heartbreak.
Disgust. Deep.
Bone-level disgust. "Get out," he said. His voice was low.
Controlled. Terrifying.
"Just get out." I looked at Mia. She was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears streaming down her face as she stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was anymore. "Please," I whispered. "Mia, She took a step back. That hurt more than anything Sarah had done. More than the messages. More than Daniel's voice. That one small step. Like I was something she needed distance from. I left. I don't remember grabbing my keys. Or my purse. Or anything. I just remember the air outside hitting my face and realizing I was still breathing, even though everything inside me had just been destroyed. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm writing this now from a hotel room that smells like industrial cleaner and regret. I haven't been home since. Daniel filed for divorce yesterday. Mia hasn't spoken to me once. Not a call. Not a message. Nothing. Marcus blocked me on everything. Phone. Email. Social media. Like I never existed. I called him 47 times. I counted. Every single one went straight to voicemail. I texted until my fingers hurt. Nothing. I even went to his office last week. His secretary, who used to smile at me, chat with me about her grandchildren, looked at me like I was a stranger. "Mr. Hale has asked that you not be permitted on the premises." The security guard said it like I was dangerous, like I was unstable, like I was someone to be removed. That's when it hit me, really hit me. Marcus never loved me. Not me. He loved the secret, the thrill, the version of himself he got to be when he was with me. But the moment it stopped being easy, the moment it became real, he walked away without hesitation. I wasn't his future. I was his escape. And I destroyed everything real in my life for something that was never real to begin with. That's the part no one tells you. The part that stays with you after the explosion. Not just the loss, but the realization that you were the only one who believed the lie. The first week after the party felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's consequences. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Daniel changed the locks the next morning. I found out when I drove back, stood on the porch with my key in my hand, and realized there was no version of that door that would open for me anymore. So I checked into a hotel. Temporary, I told myself. Just until things settled. Just until I could explain. Just until Mia calmed down enough to hear me. That was 2 months ago. The hotel room smells like cleaning chemicals, and something faintly sour underneath, like the ghosts of 100 other temporary lives that passed through here and never meant to stay. At night, the silence presses in too hard. I sleep in fragments. 2 hours if I'm lucky, sometimes less. Sometimes, not at all. The manager knocked on my door one morning, said other guests had complained. Apparently, I'd been crying loud enough to wake people through the walls. I didn't even realize I was making noise. Daniel's lawyer called within days.
Efficient. Clinical. Prepared.
The divorce papers are ready, she said. Your husband is seeking full custody of your daughter based on moral unfitness.
Moral unfitness.
The phrase didn't feel real at first, like it belonged in someone else's file. Someone worse than me. Someone I could point to and say, that's the kind of person who deserves that label, but it was mine.
Official. Documented.
I hired a lawyer I couldn't afford. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Given the public nature of your infidelity, she said, flipping through her notes, and the psychological impact on the minor child, the court is likely to favor your husband's position.
Public nature. Psychological impact.
Legal language for what I had turned my daughter's life into. The custody evaluator came a week later, a woman with a clipboard and a voice that never rose, no matter how much I broke down in front of her. She sat across from me in that hotel room and asked questions like she was cataloging damage. Why do you believe you should have access to your daughter after exposing her to explicit adult content in front of her peers? I didn't, my voice cracked. That wasn't my choice. Sarah, she ambushed, but you did intend for your daughter to eventually become aware of your relationship with Mr. Hale, she said calmly. I closed my eyes. Yes, the truth tasted like ash. Yes, we talked about leaving, about building a life together. The evaluator nodded slightly, making a note. Your daughter is currently in therapy, she added. The words hit me like a physical blow. I didn't know that. According to her therapist, the evaluator continued, she's experiencing anxiety, nightmares, and difficulty trusting others. I couldn't breathe. She said, the woman went on, her tone unchanged, that if her own mother could lie about something this significant, then she can't be sure anyone is telling the truth. That was the moment I broke. Not at the party, not when Daniel told me to leave, not when Marcus walked away. Here, in a hotel room, in front of a stranger, with a pen. Because that was the damage, not the humiliation, not the gossip. My daughter doesn't trust the world anymore, because of me. It got worse. Of course it did. Someone had recorded the slideshow. Of course they had. By the end of the week, screenshots were everywhere. Local Facebook groups, private parent chats. Even Mia's classmates had seen them. Every message, every detail. I called Daniel, begged. Please, just 5 minutes with her. He laughed. Actually laughed. You're worried about 5 minutes? He said. Sarah sent those messages to everyone we know. Everyone. Parents, neighbors, the PTA board. Women I had smiled at while using them as excuses. People who had trusted me, who had believed I was someone worth respecting. The calls stopped after the second day. At first, people reached out, asking if it was true, hoping it wasn't. Then I confirmed it, and the silence that followed was louder than anything. My sister Nicole called once. Tell me this isn't real, she said. I hesitated. That was enough. Jesus, Eleanor, what is wrong with you? She snapped and hung up. She hasn't called back since. My mother sent one message. I'm too ashamed to speak to you right now. Nothing after that. Even small things disappeared. My hairdresser canceled my appointments. 15 years of sitting in her chair, talking about everything and nothing. And suddenly, she couldn't bear to look at me. At the grocery store, strangers whispered. Once, I heard 2 women discussing me in the cereal aisle. Not even quietly. That woman who slept with her husband's friend destroyed her kid's birthday. Some kind of addiction, I heard. I left my cart and walked out. I lost my job the following week. Restructuring, they called it. But Mrs. Patterson, who had trusted me with her company's marketing for 8 years, pulled me aside before I left. I believed in you, she said quietly. My daughter looks up to you. Her voice didn't rise, didn't accuse. That somehow made it worse. How could you live like that? I didn't have an answer. Not one that sounded like anything, but what it was.
Selfishness.
The divorce finalized faster than I expected. Daniel got everything: the house, the savings,
Full custody.
The judge didn't hesitate. "Your actions have caused measurable harm to your child," she said, her voice firm. "This court prioritizes her well-being." I was granted supervised visitation, 2 hours, every other Sunday, pending Mia's willingness. She refused. "I don't want a mom who lies about everything," she told the court-appointed advocate. I wasn't there, but I heard it anyway. Those words found their way to me like everything else had.
Sharp. Precise. Final.
I saw her once, from a distance. She was getting out of Daniel's car in front of her school. She looked thinner, older, like something fragile inside her had been replaced with something harder, more careful. I almost got out of the car, almost called her name. But then she looked up, saw me, and the expression on her face, it wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was something worse.
Embarrassment.
She said something to her friends. They all looked at me, and I saw it reflected back at me from their faces.
Disgust.
She pulled out her phone. For one stupid, hopeful second, I thought, she's going to call me. She didn't. She took a picture of my license plate, probably to send to someone, proof that I was there. Proof that I was exactly what everyone said I was. I drove away before security could get involved. Marcus moved on. Of course he did. I drove past his office once. His car was there. Normal.
Untouched.
Like nothing had happened. I heard, through people who used to be part of my life, that he and Sarah were in therapy, working things out.
Rebuilding.
He got promoted. They even renewed their vows. I saw pictures before I deleted my account. Sarah looked radiant. Marcus looked grateful. Their story became one of resilience. Mine became a warning. Dr. Martinez, the therapist I'm required to see, doesn't let me hide from anything. "What do you think your daughter needs from you?" she asked during one session. "An apology," I said immediately. "And then what?" I hesitated. I want her to forgive me." Dr. Martinez leaned forward slightly. "Your daughter doesn't owe you forgiveness." The words landed harder than anything else. "She doesn't owe you a relationship. She doesn't owe you anything." "But she's my daughter," I whispered. "Yes," she said. "And you made choices that prioritized temporary validation over her long-term emotional safety."
Temporary validation.
That's what it was. Not love. Not fate. Not some tragic connection. Validation. I destroyed my daughter's sense of security for validation. I write her letters sometimes. I never send them. I don't have the right. "Dear Mia, I know you think I chose him over you, but that's not true. I chose a feeling over everything. I chose the illusion of being special over the reality of being your mother. I chose something fleeting over something that was supposed to be forever. The truth is worse than anything she believes, because she thinks I made a mistake, a terrible one, but still a mistake. Something accidental, something I regret deeply enough to undo if I could. But standing on that bridge last week, the one where Daniel proposed 17 years ago, I realized something that made me feel physically sick. This wasn't an accident. It was a pattern, a choice,
Repeated. Defended.
protected. I didn't cheat because I was unloved. I cheated because I was selfish. Because I believed I deserved to feel good, regardless of who it hurt. Because I wanted to be chosen so badly. I was willing to betray the people who had already chosen me. Mia turns 18 next month, legally an adult, legally free to erase me from her life entirely. No court involvement, no supervision schedules, just a clean break. I won't be there, not for her birthday, not for her graduation, not for the small, quiet moments that matter more than celebrations. I won't meet the person she becomes. I won't know who she falls in love with, or whether she ever believes in love at all. I traded all of that, every future version of her life that I should have been part of, for 4 months of feeling desired. People like to believe there's a lesson in stories like mine, that suffering teaches you something, that consequences force change. But Dr. Martinez says something I'm still trying to understand. Insight doesn't equal transformation. Just because I see what I did clearly now, doesn't mean I've become someone who would choose differently. And that might be the most terrifying truth of all. Because if someone looked at me tomorrow the way Marcus did that night at dinner, if someone made me feel seen, wanted, chosen, I don't know if I would be strong enough to walk away. That's the real damage, not just what I destroyed, but what I might still be capable of destroying again. This isn't a story about a broken marriage, or a woman pushed too far, or love that arrived at the wrong time. This is a story about a woman who had everything. A husband who trusted her, a daughter who loved her, a life built on stability and respect, and chose to burn it down for something that was never real. The worst part isn't that I lost everything, it's that I deserved to. And the part I can barely say out loud is that I don't know if I've learned enough to deserve anything back.